Okay. Is my screen visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So again, in the last class, as mentioned, guys, we have learned how to install Kali operating system. Just in case, if this is completely new to you and if you have no idea on what Kali Linux is, this is an operating system based on the Debian platform of Linux or Debian flavor of Linux, I would say. And this is very important for cybersecurity because this comes pre-installed with all the tools required for various operations in cybersecurity. Okay. So for performing operations or tasks like penetration testing, security research, computer forensics, reverse engineering, etc., and a lot more, all the tools required for such operations are available in Kali pre-installed. Luckily, all of those are open source. Again, you don't have to make any payment for the operating system or any of the tools mentioned in it. And again, there's a large community support available as well, just in case if you want to know how to run those tools or understand how to use them. Okay. And as mentioned, best part of this is it's completely free. You can download it and install it in your virtualization platform. Okay. So it's available for almost all platforms, VMware, VirtualBox, etc. In the last class, I've shown you how do you install VMware, and within VMware, how do you install Kali as well. So once you install it, you get a login screen here, and you have the default credentials, username Kali, and the password Kali as well, Kali, everything in lowercase. And once you log in, this is what the operating system looks like. Yeah. So as mentioned earlier, these are all the operations that you can actually perform using Kali Linux and the tools available for those operations. And these tools are not available for you in Windows. Okay, some are, some aren't. Most of them aren't actually. So again, to have a better overview of all the operations that we perform throughout the course, this is mandatory. You having Kali installed. Okay. So before we get started, um, any questions or doubts by anyone who's attending the session for the first time today? Who's new to the session? Shiva, Sumit, Sandeep, Mahesh, John. I think this is your first session, guys. I can't remember seeing you in the earlier sessions. So any questions or doubts before we get started? So don't worry, today's topic is completely unrelated to the earlier classes. Although, yeah, you might not know how to install this, but you're going to learn about Linux today from the very basics from scratch. So again, do not worry that this class might be connected to earlier sessions. No, it's not. It's a new topic altogether. Okay. So any questions? Shiva, you were saying something. Your mic was unmuted.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Shiva.
Yeah, actually, this is my first session. So, can you explain previous class or any is there any record sessions?
Oh yeah, there are recorded sessions actually. Just in case if you have missed out those classes, you can access them from the official channel of what was
Okay.
the name again?
If you don't mind, can you share me that link?
Oh yeah, why not? At the end of this class, I'll be sharing the link if needed. Sure.
Okay.
You can drop your email in the chat box. So in the chat box, once you drop your emails, I'll share the links of the previous recordings. They uploaded official on the official YouTube channel of DurgaSoft itself. You can find them if you search for DurgaSoft cybersecurity. But if not, it's better if I just share the link to all of you. So just drop your emails in the chat box. By the end of this class, I'll share all the
Yeah,
recorded sessions. Okay, they
I'll drop.
upload. I'll share the playlist link. Okay. And again, as mentioned, we have covered only two topics until now. What is networking? So basic networking fundamentals and the lab setup installation. So you have not missed out much classes, guys. And all these classes are available, as mentioned. There are recorded sessions available. I'll be sharing the recordings if needed. Okay. So without any further ado, let's get started. Okay. And I hope the audio is fine and I hope the video is visible to all of you. If there is any issues with the audio or the video, do let me know. Okay.
Sir,
So when you talk about
sir, one
oh,
more question.
Hello,
yeah.
this is
Going
Mahesh.
forward,
Yeah, Mahesh. Yeah, Sandeep.
A small query. Actually, I have brought a new laptop. Will it have a data privacy issue when we go and download the files, whatever the like Kali, but whichever maybe you have
No,
suggested.
nothing as such much. All of this is will be running in a separate virtual environment. So this has no link to your data in the base machine. Okay. So I'll show you again. In some classes, we will perform malware attacks, but still all of this is isolated to your virtual environment. So no issues with your base machine's data. Okay.
So
So
we, we,
nothing to
we
worry
can
about.
have a separate VM for this, right? I mean,
Yes,
yes.
we will be installing Kali as a virtual machine itself. So if you notice on my system as well, I'm running this application called VMware, and within the VMware application workstation Pro 17, I'm running my Kali operating system. So this is again in a different network altogether from your base machine. Okay. So you can
And
keep
one
it
more thing.
connected to the same network as well, and it would still not cause any issue as such. Yeah.
Okay. And one more thing, does it require any basic knowledge on this cybersecurity? Because I was totally from like different domains, so that's why. Does it require any basic knowledge on this before
Again,
getting
as
into the
mentioned, the
details?
prerequisites are included in the course itself, Mahesh. So again, the prerequisites are networking fundamentals and Linux commands. So I completed one of them last week in the demos. Okay. So the other prerequisites are again, as mentioned, so Linux commands. We'll be talking about that from today. So you haven't missed out many classes, just a
Okay.
few basic.
No.
Yeah.
I was new to this entire domain. It's like cyber security itself.
Mhm.
So will can I have to go through the prerequisites one more time, or how I can
No.
directly jump into
Not required.
the
This
course
is a
it is.
course built specifically for people who, again, could be from the same domain or could be from any domain at all. Okay. Everything will be covered from scratch. Whatever is required for the course is included in the course itself. So even if you belong from a non-technical background, so this is a very easy, beginner-friendly course. Okay. So nothing to worry as such. You just need to follow the topics that I'll be teaching. Nothing, you don't have to refer to anything else. As we progress with the classes, I'll also share extra resources to build upon what we have already learned. Okay. So, but again, before the course, you don't have to refer anything. That's not required. Any other questions, Mahesh?
As of now, there is nothing.
Right. Was anyone else asking any questions? Sandeep, I think your mic was unmuted.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Like, if we will miss any of the class, then the recording will be provided, right?
It will be provided. So even if you miss out any sessions, all the recordings will be shared. Nothing to worry. You'll be getting these documentations, you'll be getting the recordings, everything will be sent to you on your email. So just drop your emails in the chat box. Right. Okay, without any further ado, let's get started. So as mentioned today, we talk about a basic introduction to Kali Linux. Before we dive into Kali Linux, what is Linux and how is it different from other operating systems? So when you talk about Kali specifically, this was earlier formally known as Backtrack Linux. Okay, and it's an open source. Open source in the sense the source code is given to you, so you can modify the applications or the data if you want to from that operating system as well. Okay, and it's a Debian-based distribution. So there are multiple flavors again in Linux, Debian-based, like Red Hat, etc., etc. Okay, so again, Ubuntu, Kali, all of these fall under Debian-based architecture. Okay, and this was built specifically for cybersecurity related tasks like advanced pen testing, security research, computer forensics, reverse engineering, or vulnerability management, vulnerability scanning, vulnerability assessment. All of these operations can easily be performed in this operating system. Okay, and it has more than 600 plus tools pre-installed specifically for all the operations related to cybersecurity. Okay, but when you again talk about the broader aspect of Linux operating systems, they're quite different from your Windows and Mac. Okay. Windows, we all know, developed by Microsoft, initially founded by Bill Gates. Okay. A very user-friendly operating system because it has this GUI feature, graphical user interface feature. Okay. All the operations can be performed with your mouse. You can click, drag and drop, etc., etc. And again, since it's that user-friendly, it's one of the most widely used operating systems as well for personal computers, often preferred for gaming or productivity applications or your leisure activities. On the other hand, when you talk about Linux, this was built specifically for a point, again, in a point of view where this is for developer environments. Okay. But later on, you also had client or based operating system environments as well. But it was built as an open source operating system, specifically with command line interface feature, okay, where you're focusing more on CLI. Okay. And that CLI feature gives you a very powerful control over the operating system. Whatever operations you want to perform, they can be performed a lot faster, a lot quicker with just single line command. Now, people do find difficulty somewhat in the initial days because you have to remember the syntax of the command and you have to remember those commands as well. Okay, but with practice, this definitely gets a lot easier, guys. Okay, so again, whatever operations you want to perform, it's much faster compared to your GUI interface because you execute it with commands. Okay, and it's again with single line commands, which is very easy to perform. Okay, and again, as mentioned, there are multiple distributions in Linux. Since the initial days when Linux was released, it was released as open source. Okay, from that open source code, people started developing their own versions of Linux. So even today, majority of operating system distributions of Linux are open source itself, but some are paid. Okay, so again, they are licensed versions as well of Linux. Okay, but when you talk about Kali specifically, don't worry, it's open source and anyone can use it for free. And as mentioned earlier, it was built or this was created in again by the founder, and I think it was Linus Torvalds or something. I think that's his name. Okay, but it was built as a user-friendly operating system for developers, for server environments or development environments. And since this is open source, there's a large community support. Okay, so whatever applications are available as paid applications for you in other operating systems, you can find the free alternatives for it in the Linux operating. Okay, free and open source softwares are available in Linux, and there's tons and tons of softwares. And just in case if you don't understand something, there's a huge community support online as well to support you to understand how to run these tools as well. Okay. And coming to the final category of operating systems, there's macOS, the niche, I would say, or the high standard operating system developed by Apple specifically or exclusively for Apple hardware. Okay, this is not available for you in other operating systems. Okay, you can install Linux in any machine. Okay, on any hardware from any vendor, Lenovo, Dell laptops, HP, etc., etc. macOS is only available specifically for Apple-related devices. Okay, and the central feature of macOS is it provides a very sleek, very good-looking and design-wise intuitive interface, which blends those aesthetics and functionalities together. Okay, and again provides a very stable environment because it was built on the core of Unix itself. Unix is from where Linux is also derived. Okay, and macOS is specifically chosen for its design, multimedia capabilities, and that integration, that seamless, perfect integration among the Apple ecosystem. So that connectivity among all the Apple devices, MacBooks, iPads, iPhones, etc., that is again top notch compared to other operating systems in the Apple ecosystem. Okay. So these are your three different operating systems that exist in the world today. Okay, and what we're going to focus in our sessions in the upcoming days is on Linux operating system. Okay, and your Linux operating system architecture, the file system architecture, is quite different from your Windows, what we regularly use. Okay, Windows is a drive-based architecture. So what I mean by that is you have C drive, D drive, etc., etc. So if I go to this PC, you can see there's C drive, D drive, E drive. You can create as many drives or partitions as you want. But the main drive here is the C one. Okay. So the C drive contains all the important program file data or your system or your again booting data, okay, your kernel related data, your user personal data. Okay, all of this is stored in the C drive. And then you can create other partitions where you can store your personal data as well. Okay. Linux also has partitions in it. So you can create partitions in Linux as well. But on the core level, this is more of a directory-based architecture. So again, all your partitions are residing in this one main folder called the parent root folder. This is very commonly represented with a forward slash, a single forward slash. Okay. And under this one main folder, you have all the other subfolders. But an important point to note, whenever we talk about Linux operating system, we don't call them as folders. We call them as directories. Okay. So a directory is, again, what you call as a folder in Windows. Okay. So there's the main parent root directory here. And under the parent root, you have all the other subdirectories. Okay. So some of these directories are default directories which are available in every Linux operating system. And today we're going to talk about the relevance of each of these directories. Okay. One more key point to note, one more key difference to note is what you call as administrator in a Windows operating system is called a root user in Linux operating system. So the user with the highest privileges across the device is called the root user, or in Windows terminology, it's called the administrator. Okay. So any questions or doubts up to this point? Anyone? There's other students on other link as well from other institutes. Shrija, Himani, Aisha, any questions on your end? Aisha, Shrija, right. Other students, Mahesh, John, Pearl, Sandeep, Shiva, Sumit, Pradeep, any questions?
No, sir.
All right. Am I going too fast? Do you want me to slow down or anything? Is the audio fine? Do let me know, guys, if there's any issues with anything. Just let me know. Okay, if you want me to repeat something, if you don't understand something, please do not hesitate. Okay, moving on. So as mentioned, let's talk about some of these important folders in the Linux architecture. Okay, so as mentioned, if I show this practically as well, if I go to my Kali system here, let me log in with my default creds. And if I go to file system here, you can see this is my parent root directory. So if you click on this bar here, this is represented with the forward slash. So your forward slash is the parent root directory, which is the top level directory. So under the parent root only, you have everything else falling under it. Okay. So the top level directory is called the parent root. And under parent root, you have all these other subdirectories. Okay. Bin, boot, dev, etc, home, lib. Okay. So each of these has its own purpose. Okay. And we're going to talk about some of the most important ones today. Okay, so what does each of this directory represent? Okay, what kind of data is stored in each of these directories? We'll talk about that now. Okay, but first, as mentioned, the top level directory is called the parent root. Okay, and all the other directories, all the other files are a part of this main parent root itself. Now, in the parent root, the first directory we have is bin. Okay, bin stands for binaries. Okay. So if I go back to my Kali system here, you can see the first folder is bin here. Okay, and this contains the binaries in it. Just 1 second, guys. Just give me 1 minute. Apologies about that. So again, as mentioned, the bin directory is used to contain essential binary executable files. Now, what do I mean by that? So as mentioned, your Linux operating system is a very CLI-based operating system, a command line interface-based operating system, which means all the operations can be performed through simple commands. Okay? And you can execute these commands in something called a shell or the terminal. Okay. So if you right-click anywhere on the screen, and if you click on this option here, open terminal here, this opens up the terminal for you. And basically, this is called the shell terminal. Okay. And in this, you can execute any command of your choice. Okay. I mean, in the Linux operating system. So again, this is very similar to your command prompt in Windows. So if I open up Windows R and search for cmd, this is the Windows shell. Okay, where you can execute commands here like ipconfig, etc., etc. Okay. Similarly, in Linux also, we can execute commands in the terminal. Okay. If the font is too small, you can click on edit, not edit, sorry. You can click on file, preferences, and in preferences, you can change the font from here. Much better. And now, if you want, you can execute commands through the terminal here. So in Linux, ipconfig will not work for internet, for IPv4 addresses. ipconfig is not a command for Linux. It's ifconfig. Okay, interface configuration. And that shows your system's private IP. Now, do not get confused what the private IP is. We did talk about that in the earlier sessions. If you have missed out those sessions, I'll share the recordings. Okay. But again, as mentioned, you can execute certain commands here. So I can run a command like ifconfig. I can run a command like clear. This will clear the terminal for me. I can run a command like ls to list out all the files in my terminal. So on my desktop, if I create a document here, let's say Shoaib. Okay. And now on in my terminal, if I type ls, I can see the file name show up. Okay, so ls is to list the contents of your present working directory in the terminal. Okay, so all these commands that I'm executing, ls, clear, again, ping to check if I can reach a certain website, ping www.google.com. Okay, so all these commands which I'm executing here are stored as binary scripts. Okay, so binaries are basically the script files which represents the commands you can run in the terminal. Okay, so whatever commands I'm running here, ping, ls, clear, clear, okay, all of those are stored in the bin folder here. Okay, so if I search here, let's say clear, C-L-E-A-R. You can see there's a file called clear. Okay, I can search here as well. C-L-E-A-R, and you can see there's the file shown here for you. Okay, so this clear command is running from the script here. Okay, so every time I run the command clear, it is fetching this file called clear from here, and it is executing it in the terminal. Okay, similarly, if I search for ping, P-I-N-G, you can see there's a command here, ping. So this command, whenever I run the command in the terminal, it's fetching this file from here and it's executing the code written in that file. Okay, so every command that you can execute in the Linux terminal is stored in this folder called bin. Okay, there's some other commands also. There's another folder called sbin. If I go one step back, you can see there's a folder called sbin as well. I'll discuss this in a bit. Okay, so but some commands are stored in sbin. So if you notice, okay, but basically, as mentioned, first folder bin is what contains the essential binary executable files. So the basic commands which you can run for system operation or for maintenance are stored in the bin folder. Okay. After that, the next command, the next folder you have is boot. Now, this is a folder which contains the files related to the boot process. Okay. So the kernel files, the bootloader files, the configuration files required for the proper boot up of your system are stored in /boot. Okay. So the first slash represents parent root directory, and under that you have the boot directory. Okay, boot contains the grub bootloader files or the configuration files required for your proper startup or the boot up of your operating system. So it's very important to note that you cannot delete any of these files. If you do so, that would be corrupting the operating system in turn. Okay, so never modify any files in the boot directory. Okay, then comes etc, or also sometimes known as etc. Okay, and this contains system-wide configuration files. So now whatever application you have, whatever tools you have in the Kali can be modified, can be configured or modified with the configurations from the etc folder. Okay. 1 second, guys. Apologies about that. So as mentioned, so if I go to my Kali system here, and if I show this practically to you, so whatever services you might have, whatever applications you might have in your Kali system, each of those applications or services has a folder for it specifically. Okay. So in my Kali, if I had to modify my web server, okay, so the service for web related activities is called Apache 2. Okay. So when you want to host your own web server from any Linux operating system, you have to modify the configuration files in this folder called Apache 2. So if I open this up, you can see their configuration files available here. And configuration files always have the extension .conf. Okay. When I open this up, this shows the data in that configuration file, and all the settings can be modified from here. Okay. So whatever services you have in your Kali system, if you want to modify the configuration of that service, you open up the folder with that service name. For example, if I want to modify the DHCP service, there's a folder called DHCP here. Okay. When I open this up, there's a configuration file for DHCP. Okay. And all the settings for the DHCP server can be modified from here. Okay, I can change these values here. Okay, so basically etc, as mentioned, is basically a compilation of all the configuration files that are available in the system for the various applications, or the various services you use in the Kali system. Okay, moving on to the next folder after etc, there is home. Going back to my VMware. So after etc, we have the next folder called home. Now this is the personal space for your secondary users. So as mentioned, guys, there's a main admin user called the root, and there are secondary users. So right now I'm logged in as a user called Kali. So if you notice, it shows Kali here. You can also run a command, who am I? This command shows you which user you're currently logged in as. Okay. And I'm right now currently logged in as a user called Kali. Okay. And Kali, please note, is not the primary user, guys. He's just a secondary user. Okay. And all the personal files of secondary users are stored in the home directory. Okay. So if I go back to my file system here, if I open up home directory here, you can see there's a new directory called, there's a separate directory called Kali. And on that directory, you can notice there's a home icon. Okay. So this represents that this is the home directory or the personal space of the Kali user. If I open this up, I can see his or her personal files here: desktop, document, download, music, pictures, etc., etc. So this folder is very similar to your C drive users folder in Windows. So if I go to my C drive here in my Windows system, C drive, And in the C drive, there's a folder called users. If I open this up, this shows all the folders for all the users you have in your in your Windows system. And on my Windows, I only have one user called Mr.AnjiReddy. Okay. So when I open up this folder, I can see his or her personal files. Okay. So there's desktop, document, download, music, pictures, etc., etc. The personal data of the user called Mr.AnjiReddy. Okay. And a similar folder like this is available in the Kali system. That's called the home directory. So if you go to file system, there's a folder called home. This contains the personal files of the secondary users. Now you might have a question. What about the files or the personal data of root user? So for root user, there's a separate folder called root itself. Okay. And please do not get confused or do not interchange the terms parent root and root. Okay. So parent root is the main directory which contains all the other directories. Okay. So if I go back over here, one step back. Oh, 1 second. Better to open it up again. Yeah. So this is the parent root, guys. Parent root is represented with a single forward slash. Under the parent root, you have all the other directories and subdirectories. And this root here is not the parent root. Okay. So this is the root user's home directory. Okay. So this is the personal space of the root user. His desktop, his applications, his downloads are all stored over here. Okay. And right now, since I'm logged in as a secondary user, I don't have the required privileges to access this folder. So when I double click this, it should give you an error saying permission denied. Okay. Since I'm not the root user, it will throw you an error saying you cannot access that folder or the contents of it because I'm right now currently logged in as a secondary user. I don't have the privileges to access the root user's home directory. Okay. But by the end of this class, I'm going to show you how do you get root user access as well. Okay. So don't worry. As mentioned. Okay, moving on. As mentioned, the home directory is the personal space for the secondary users. Then you have lib. This contains the supporting files or the libraries for the binary executables. So whatever libraries are required or needed by the binaries in bin and sbin during their runtime are stored in lib. So again, nothing that we will work on, nothing that we would ever touch. Okay. But again, just to know what that folder is. Okay. So there's lib32 and lib64 containing the supporting files for applications of 32-bit architecture or 64-bit architecture. Okay, so this contains the supporting files of all applications available here. Okay, in the Kali system. Okay, so any questions or doubts in this slide for any of the folders, whether parent root or bin, boot, etc, home, lib? Any questions or doubts up to this point, guys? Aisha, Shrija, Himali.
Sir, understood, sir.
Okay, Shrija. Yeah. Again, we'll be practically working on this. We'll work on the terminal a lot, Himali, in the upcoming sessions as well. So you'll get all the practice needed. Others, Isaac, Mahesh, Pearl, Sandeep, Sumit, Pradeep. Any questions? Hello, guys, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
No question, sir.
Okay, perfect. Moving forward, let's go into the next slide here. Right. So a few more folders to discuss for today. So next folder is the media folder. Okay, so this is your mount point for removable media devices, guys. What I mean by that is in the Windows operating system, whenever you connect an external device, let's say a USB, a pen drive, or a thumb drive, or whatever it is, okay, so that gets added in Windows as a separate drive for you. So if I go to my this PC over here, whenever I connect an external device, that gets added as a separate drive over here, a separate partition. But in Linux, that's not the case. Okay, it gets mounted in the media folder. So there's a directory called media here. If you notice, if I go to my file system, there's a folder called media. Okay, so whenever I connect an external device, that device gets added as a separate directory here. So when I connect a pen drive, it gets mounted over here. Okay, and then there's one more folder called MNT. This was the older folder used actually, okay, for these external devices, okay, but not being used for partitions. So if you add another internal hard drive, that internal hard drive partition is shown in the MNT folder here, okay. Media is for external devices, third-party peripherals, and MNT is for internal partitions that you might add up in the system. Then you have OPT. this is a folder for optional packages. What I mean by optional packages is if you download any third-party applications from the internet, it's good practice to store it in the OPT folder here. Okay. So again, there's no mandatory rule that you have to store it there. Okay. But it is reserved for that purpose itself. So reserved for the installation of optional software packages or third-party applications. Okay. OPD stands for optional. And then as mentioned, the root directory, the parent root, again, sorry, not the parent root. Don't get confused. So parent root is the / and this is the root user's home directory. So as mentioned, this contains the personal data of the root user. Not accessible right now because we are logged in as a secondary account, but I'm going to show you how do you create root user access. Okay. And then there's sbin. So as mentioned, there's one more folder called sbin. So this is the folder which contains the executables for super users. Sbin stands for super user binaries. Okay. So certain commands can only be run as a super user. So those commands are stored in sbin, if you notice. Okay. So if I show you an example, there's a command called apt-get. This is a command to install applications in Kali. Okay, so if you type apt-get install, and if you specify an application name like nmap or anything, and if I hit enter, you can see it throws an error. Again, blah, 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 blah. And in the end, it says permission denied. Okay. Why is the permission being denied? It very sarcastically asks you, are you the root user? Okay. Since I'm not the root user, this permission is denied. I cannot run this command. Okay. So certain commands are specifically reserved for root users, for super users. Okay. And those commands are stored in sbin for us. Okay. Similar to bin, but contains binaries or executables that are typically used by system administrators. Okay. So these binaries, if you want to execute them as a secondary user, you have to enter your password. Okay. So you have to run them with something called sudo. Don't worry, I'll talk about that later. Okay. Oh, my battery is low. My charger. Right. Okay. So moving on, after sbin, the next command, oh sorry, the next folder is tmp. This is basically your temporary folder. So whatever cache files you have, whatever temporary files that the operating system generates during runtime, those cache files are stored in the temp directory. Okay. So this is very similar to the temp folder you have in Windows as well. So if you open up Windows R, and if you search here, percentage temp percentage. And if you click on OK, this opens your temp directory in Windows. Okay. So again, the cache data that is generated by various applications during runtime. Okay. And if you want, you can delete all this. Control A, Shift delete. This definitely saves up a lot of space on your drive. Okay. So this is cache data. If you want, you can remove that. Okay. Some files will not get deleted because they're still being used by the operating system. Okay. But the remaining else and others you can delete. Okay. And that does save up a lot of space for you on the system. Okay. And a similar folder like this is available for you in Linux as well. So if I go to my Kali operating system here, and if I go to my file system, you can see there is this folder called tmp. This contains the temporary data. And there is no harm in deleting any of these folders. Okay, so you can remove them. Okay, some folders have this cross mark, which means for that you need the root privileges. So you cannot delete those. To delete them, you would require the root privileges as well. Okay, moving on. After that, you have the next folder, which is var. Now this contains variable data. Var stands for variable data. What I mean by variable data is some data in your system gets automatically updated on its own dynamically. So those dynamically changing or automatically changing files are stored in the var directory. Examples of such files are your web server files, backup files, log files, etc., are stored in var. So contains variable data, which on its own keeps on changing. So data stored here dynamically changes during system operation. Okay. So if I go to the var folder here, you can see in var there's a folder called log. Okay. And this contains all the logs for your system logs, boot logs, Apache web server logs, etc., etc. Okay. So all the logs are present in this var folder here. Okay. Now, yeah, that is the last folder to discuss today, guys. Definitely, I did discuss only some of them here, so I have missed out a few. So I ignored dev, I ignored MNT, I ignored proc, okay. I ignored SRV, sys, user, etc., etc. They're not that important right now, guys. So we have only covered the ones which are typically used in your day-to-day usage, okay. So the bin folder, boot folder, home folder, your root folder. So we'll be working on this a lot. We'll be operating on these folders a lot. So I've only covered those right now. As we progress with our sessions, I'll explain the usage of other folders as well, okay. But for now, these folders are more than sufficient. These 12 folders: parent root, bin, boot, etc, home, lib, media, opt, root, sbin, tmp, and var. These are more than sufficient for now. Okay. As we progress, we'll learn about the other folders as well. And the last thing to perform today is how do you get root user access? Okay. So again, I've written down the commands here, guys. But again, you don't need to run the first two commands. These are for older operating systems. You can directly go with the last command itself, sudo password. Okay. So this is a command to generate a password for your root account. So by default, your root user does not have a password to it. Okay. So in order to access the root account, you need to create a password first. Okay. And the command for that is sudo passwd. Sudo stands for super user root. Okay, I'll explain this a lot more in detail in the upcoming sessions and tomorrow's session as well. But to give you a brief glimpse on what sudo is, it allows you to run admin commands. Okay, so if you remember, I ran a command called apt-get install nmap. This did not work earlier because it was throwing the error permission denied. But if I run the same command now with sudo space apt-get install nmap, now it will work. So sudo stands for super user. So when you want to run any admin related command as a secondary user, you have to run it with sudo. So it says run this command as admin user. So now when you hit enter, it will ask you for your authentication, your password. Type the correct password, KALI. And when you type the password, it will not be visible to you for security reason. It's blank. Okay. But just type the correct password and hit enter. And the command now works, as you can see. Now it says nmap is already installed, so there's nothing new to install. It's already the latest version. Okay. So the command successfully executed here. Here it didn't work because we didn't add sudo on the front. Okay. So when you want to run any admin related command as a secondary user, you always have to type sudo first. Okay. So similarly, I'm typing sudo passwd. This creates a password for you now for the root account. Okay. So now you can type a new password of your choice, confirm the same password again, and now the password is successfully updated. Once the password is updated, you can now log out from your system. On the top right corner, you have that button. So select that button, click on logout, and now log in again with root credentials. So this time, rather than logging with Kali and Kali, I'll type username root. Please note you cannot change the admin account name. It should always be called root itself. Okay. So the admin account in Linux will always be called root. In Windows, you can name it anything. You can. So in my base machine, I've called the admin account as Mr.AnjiReddy. Okay. So, but in Linux, root user is the only name. I mean, root is the only name given to admin account. Okay. So you have to always log in as root here and the password that you just created. Okay. And now when I log into my account here, you can note two very visible differences. So if you go to file system, you can notice here now the home icon is placed on the root folder. So earlier I was unable to access this folder called root, but if I open this now, I can access the folders which are personal to the root user. Okay. Back then, I was getting a permission denied error, but now I can access it free. Secondly, if I open up my terminal, it shows you root@Kali. So as you can see, it indicates that you're logged in as root. Even if I run the command who am I, you can see it shows root over here. Okay, so I'm logged in now currently as a root user. So this is an operation that I would want you to perform before we get into the next session, guys. Okay, so that's that. Nothing further for the session today. A brief demo on what Linux operating systems are, how they are different from Windows and Mac operating systems, and what are the important folders in Linux. Okay, and also by the end of the session, I've shown you how to get root user access. Okay, in the next class and tomorrow's session, we'll be going with some important commands in Linux. Okay, commands like pwd, ls, cd, mb, clear, mkdir, touch. So I've practically explained each of these commands here. As you can see, I've explained what the command is, I've described the command, and I've given screenshots as well. to understand what the command does. Okay. So again, in the sessions, in the upcoming sessions, we'll be practically working on all of these commands one by one. These are very important for your daily usage of Kali. Okay, for your basic operations. How do you list out files? How do you copy files? How do you move files? How do you create them? How do you delete them? Okay. How do you edit them? Okay. How do you check your IP address configuration, etc., etc. So all of these commands are available in the upcoming sessions. We'll talk about these in the upcoming sessions. Okay. Any questions, any doubts up to this point? Shrija, Himali, Aisha, others as well. Isaac, okay. Isaac, Mahesh, Pearl, Sandeep, Sumit, Pradeep.
So the class timing will be same, right?
Yes, same timing. No change in the timings, guys. It's going to be at same 8 p.m. IST, Indian Standard Time. No change in the timing. Okay. Aisha, I saw your message. I'll be sharing the recording again. What recording did you miss out on?
We will get this command and all this in a documented format, or just
Yes, you will be getting the documents as well. So all the recordings, all this PDF documents will be shared as well. So again, all the data will be given to you. Any other questions, guys?
Sir, can you please post your contact information for advanced courses?
Yes.
Thank
One
you.
second. This 919849984. So if you have any queries regarding this course or any other course in cybersecurity, you can drop a WhatsApp message on this number, guys. That's my personal number. 984998477. Okay. And yeah, again, as mentioned, in the next session and tomorrow's class, we'll be working practically on all of these commands that I've mentioned, guys. So very important. Again, whenever you're working in the IT industry, if you're working with Linux, these commands are something that you're supposed to know by default. Okay, so don't worry, we'll practically learn each of these commands from the very basics. Okay. So that's for tomorrow. As mentioned, that's an overview of what we'll be learning in the next session, guys. So please do join the session tomorrow at the same time using the same link. Okay. And yeah, again, if anyone needs any recordings also, please drop your emails in the chat box. I'll share the recordings on that link. I mean, on those emails. Okay. Aisha, are you missing out any recording? Which recording are you requesting for? Oh yeah, Sumit. Yeah, we will learn some basic bash scripting, basically understanding how to write commands and or run programs in the Linux terminal. So basics of that will be covered in this course. Okay. Other than that, nothing else is much required. Yeah, Himali, your mic is unmuted. You were saying something. Sure, Himali. No problem. Sure. We'll connect for that. No worries. Okay. So yeah, that's that. Nothing further for the session today, guys. We can exit the session here and we can connect back tomorrow at the same time on the same link. Please do join the session tomorrow. We'll be learning practically on all these Linux commands. Quite an interesting and a fun class. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a good day. See you tomorrow at the same.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.